Welcome to the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck. I am your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post here on a weather warning day in the Mile High City. Travel safe out there wherever you're listening to me, whether it's your work, whether you're in your car. Be safe in your travels. And hopefully I see some of you out there in Big Red Country. That would be, at least in terms of pro sports, Kansas City. It's Broncos v. Kansas City. The Broncos finally broke that 16-game losing skid to the Chiefs a year ago. That was in Denver. They still face an 8-game slide in Kansas City. 8 is enough, right? Is this the Broncos team with this quarterback, with Bo Nix, that can pull off the upset of the undefeated Chiefs? Chiefs have been living dangerously, but they're getting better. And man, did they really need DeAndre Hopkins? Does Apple really need more stock? Like, enough already. The Chiefs, the challenge is real, and no one better to break it down than Underdog Sports. NFL insider, my friend who lives in Colorado, but he has covered the Chiefs as much as anybody. He is going to be joining the show to provide insight on to what makes the Chiefs tick, and can the Broncos possibly, as an 8-point, 9-point dog in our shops, pull off an upset? We're going to get to all of that after the break. Have you been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work? What are you waiting for? Give my friends at Hoggett Injury Law a call. Their motto, with us, it's personal. I've known Darby Hoggett for years. I coached his son in basketball and baseball. We became good friends. Many of his clients become Darby's good friend. You don't even have to pay Darby. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. So again, if you've been hurt in a car wreck or injured at work, give Darby a call. That number, 1-833-HOGGATT. That's 1-833-HOGGET, or visit the website at hoggettlaw.com. BetOnline is the world's trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds from football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get on all the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Well, this is a great day for me, other than the weather, trying to deal with some travel stuff, because I get to have James Palmer on the Broncos podcast. Those of you who have followed me the last several years, you've heard James on here. James, how the heck are you, my friend?
I escaped the snow, Troy, and I snuck up to the mountains last night with my son to try to enjoy some, Winter Park opens on Friday. We're here, and we're going to sneak a little something in before football weekend. It's great.
So is it opening day at the Winter Park tomorrow?
It's opening day. Get a hot dog. It's opening day. Get your Cracker Jacks. Here we go.
Oh, my word, James, that is fantastic. I've skied that place with my family. It's been years, but that is a great spot. I mean, it's hard to go wrong in Colorado, but that is a sneaky great spot.
Very much so. Very much so. We love it here.
Before we get going, I wanted you to tell people where they are, where you are now, where they can find you, because I can't, with going into it briefly, when NFL Network did whatever they did and moved on to you, I was shocked, only because was there anyone better on NFL Network that can report, can write, can be great on air? And as someone who went through something similar at a TV station a few months before that, where I could have stayed, but it was very awkward. I was like, what in the heck's going on with the industry? So where are you now, James? Where can people find you? What are you up to?
Yeah, it's interesting. Appreciate the kind words, Troy. Do. So joined Underdog Fantasy and Underdog NFL at the start of the season, because I always went on Steve Smith's show. Everybody probably knows Steve is one of the better receivers of the last 20 years, maybe, probably a future Hall of Famer. In my opinion, I think in a lot of people's opinion, he would go on his show all the time. And he was like, what if we just did our own show? I was like, yeah, let's do that. So Steve and I have been having a blast for Underdog doing a show together, where I don't know if there's a better really about Steve and how well he knows film and the amount of teams in the NFL that pick his brain on receivers. And I'm learning so much working with him. It's been awesome. And then I'm working as an insider for Bleacher Report, which has been super fun, just kind of like getting a chance to tell everybody on that platform, which is massive with everything Bleacher Report's connected to with Time Warner and HBO Max. And, I was on a draft special, that was tied into Max on the draft, and then on the trade deadline, and then I get a chance to just kind of like bounce around to all these different gigs now and just kind of be like a hired brain, NFL brain for hire, Troy, has been kind of the name of the game right now.
Well, I'm happy it's working out because you are fantastic at what you do. You remind me so much of a beat reporter. Like when I covered baseball, there's a nuance to it, to how you dig, how you earn trust, and you do it by bouncing around. I mean, I only did it covering one team. I did some national when I covered MLB, and so I'm familiar with. But that's a tough gig, and you were able to do it with such a great, just you're smooth, you're trusted, and now you're in a new platform where people are going to see you. And they should know your expertise. If not for one thing, it's the Chiefs. Because you did a lot of Chiefs stuff through the years, even living in Denver. The joke was we'd never see you because the Broncos were irrelevant. You were basically the Chiefs beat writer at that point. So, James, they've lost 8 games. They've lost 8 straight to the Chiefs. I'm not going to lie, James. Chiefs fatigue has set in with me. And it's not Taylor Swift. It's not Travis Kelce. It's not Mahomes. I like all of them. They deserve all the attention they get. I'm just over it. I want somebody to challenge them. They don't even get challenged. It reminds me of the Patriots in the AFC East all those years. Now the Broncos. So let's start there, where when this run started in 19, you're around. Did you have did it feel possibly dynastic because of the Mahomes pairing with Reed? What has been in your, if you take the macro view, how we got to this point?
Yeah, that's a great question because I did notice pretty early, and you're right. I've been around this team so much. I've followed them on every single Super Bowl they've been on. I've been assigned to them throughout the playoffs, throughout the Super Bowl, and been on the sideline for every one of their Super Bowls. Been there, hosted their parades, sadly, for Broncos fans. But I did know it was there because of the quarterback. We know how good of an offensive mind Andy Reid is, but it wasn't that Pat was just so talented, which he was. It wasn't that he had this skill set to, athletically that was so dominant. It was because everybody in Kansas City was telling me, and Broncos fans probably don't want to hear this, but he's wired the same as Tom Brady. And it's difficult to be wired that way, in all honesty, because to be that talented, that skilled with, remember the numbers he was putting up, 50 touchdowns in the early portion of his career. But to still value winning over those numbers and over individual performance is the trait that everybody in Kansas City kept kind of comparing. And they didn't want to early because that's high praise, right? It's like, it's the greatest player and greatest winner we have probably seen in this, in decades. But it's because he's wired that way, in the same way Tom was wired. And I covered Brady a bunch in New England before I started covering, Pat a lot. It is, what do we need to do this week to win? I don't care if I hand it off 40 times. I don't care if I have to throw it 50. Do we need to play the field position game and rely on our special teams? Tell me what we need to do to win, and I will get us there. I hate to say it, Troy, that's not a common trait among quarterbacks. Stats matter to a lot of these guys. Guys chase stats. Guys want to, they want everybody to see them on national television playing well. We won because of me. Like that's a big thing with quarterbacks. It is rare to put the team, it sounds crazy, but to really take a back seat often. And Brady did that for full seasons at a time where they relied on the defense and they would just run it. And he'd be like, cool with it. Pat's wired the same way. And it's that on top of there's just an aura around them that they're going to win. Just Pat has that with him. And the young guy that got some comps, I did a Commanders game recently, and there's a sneaky idea that Jaden Daniels kind of has this trait. And the part that goes along with it that both these guys have, and I think Bo might have this a little bit, is there isn't a position group on the team, Troy, that Patrick Mahomes doesn't hang out with, that Brady used to not be able to relate with. And to be a superstar quarterback and be able to be relatable to everybody in the locker room, the other 52 guys, I think that's a superpower. I think that's really hard, because even as good as much as teammates love Peyton Manning, and you're Peyton Manning, it's hard for guys to be you're just one of the guys. You're Peyton Manning. Somehow in the locker room, Pat is just one of the guys. Jaden Daniels has a little bit of that in him, talking to some people that have played with both of them. So that's where this whole thing started. It was just that the way that Pat's wired team together.
And it's crazy because if people are familiar with him Texas Tech, and I followed him. I think I've told you the story. LaTroy Hopkins pitched for the Rockies. He's his godfather. So I've known about Patrick Mahomes since he was like 13, 14 years old. He's like, hey, this guy, he's going to be great. I thought he was going to be an MLB pitcher. I mean, but Mahomes, LaTroy was the first one saying, no, he really wants to play football. But if you watch his stats at Texas Tech, the idea a guy throwing for 500 yards wouldn't follow stats in the pros, it's a juxtaposition and that type of humility to want to win, because guys chase stats and they chase money. It really is a clout league, not like the NBA, which is a highlight, but it matters. We know, you know better than I do because you're around locker rooms. It matters to guys. So when your best player is humble and coachable, it sets an example for everyone. And to your point, what the Broncos face, because his stats this year aren't great. He's almost underwater, touchdowns to picks. I think he finally went over last week. But to your point, and this brings up the Broncos, James, is he's the best player in football on third and fourth down. It's Patrick Mahomes, even as he's struggling. And so when you watch them, to explain to Broncos, because you watch the Chiefs more closely, how difficult it is to put them away because of their ability to finish on third, fourth down, and fourth quarter. It reminds me of Elway. And you talk about relatable. That's how John was in the locker room. This was before social media and private everything. So I don't know if John would have been the same in this era, but he was that guy that would go out with the linemen and drink and be a guy's guy. But you see that in the way Patrick's teammates respect him. But what is the challenge when a team looks like they're slogging along, they're this sloth, and then, man, give them a third down, give them a fourth down, give them a fourth quarter, and they just finish. So how do you combat that?
Yeah, that's the crazy part. That's the nuts part. By the way, you mentioned salary. I do want to mention this. Brady was never the highest paid quarterback in the league in any year of his career. And I don't think moving forward, Pat's ever going to be the highest paid quarterback in the league in any year of his career moving forward. I think that's where they're also somewhat similar. But anyway, it's relatively tied to this, Troy. It's third and short constantly. And that's where the metrics are off the charts for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, literally off the charts. When it's like 3rd and 3, if you look at the metrics of like his success rate, it's like 30% higher than any other quarterback in football. Like it's mind blowing. So the way that they've built this offense now is it's sustainable drives. He's really, really smart with I say smart with the football, even though he's had some turnover issues and he'll always give you chances for picks. You got to capitalize on them. Most teams don't. He'll always give you chances. But the way that they've built this offense now, we're gonna wear you down on first and second down. We're gonna run behind our big three, which is probably the best center guard combo in all of football. Their tackles leave something to be desired, but they leave that up to Pat to kind of handle that. And they run up the middle and they play the possession game in the short passing game. And if it's third and short, you are in just an unbelievable bind. And because he has this trait, which Lamar's really good at it too. And I remember talking to Jaquan McMillan about this in the locker room a couple of weeks ago before they're getting ready to face Baltimore. Their ability to manipulate the line of scrimmage is uncanny. Like the way that they both change speeds, Lamar and Pat, like right at the line of scrimmage. Oh, he's going to run. No, then they'll slow up and then they'll dump it off. And then but the eyes are always downfield. So that added element, when they just put the ball in his hands on third and short, is he going to scramble because he's quicker than you think he is? He's faster than you think he is. He's more physical than you think he is. Or is he just going to dump it off to one of these guys? And so much of it is feel. And that's why the add of DeAndre Hopkins is such a big deal, because he's a field player. So is Juju Smith-Schuster. So is Travis Kelce. And that's the way their offense works. If it's third and short and the Broncos can't get off the field, they're done. I think you have to find a way to get negative plays on first and second down, or at least, the Kareem Hunt runs are not successful on first and second down, because that's the way they built it. I've talked to people in the building this year, Troy. We're a physical football team now. That's what they really think. They think they're a team that will wear defenses down. It was told to me directly, we look at the tape, and in the second half, people don't want to tackle. Like, they don't want to tackle. And all three of our backs run really, really physical. And that's what they're banking on right now. And when you don't want to tackle in the second half, what does that get you in those third and shorts? Just a little added emphasis downfield that it's already in your advantage. So Denver needs to get off the field in third down, but first and second down is going to be a bigger part of that. I think their edge rushers can get after Mahomes. Like, they got after Mahomes with Tampa Bay last week. They were able to pressure him. I think interiorly, what they need, Jonathan Franklin Myers and Malcolm Roach and all these big bodies in the middle, eat up those big three that I mentioned. and allow your pass rushers to be in one-on-one situations to try to create some pressure on first and second down.
You're going to have to tackle well. That wasn't a
Yep.
skill. When this defense has struggled with Vance, a lot of times it's not on Vance. It's they don't tackle well. You know, Cody Barton's got to play well. DJ Jones, you know, when the way you're describing it, James, he's going to have to win some battles up front to allow Zach Allen to help him and John Franklin Meyer. And they've been pretty good against the run, way better than last year. They have
night and day compared to last year.
Yeah, last year at this time, they were the worst in the league, right around 160 yards allowed. They're about 40 yards less than that. They'll still get gashed at times, and they wore down. Derrick Henry's a little different animal, but this feels like they could win a rock fight. But the difference now then still – Mahomes on 3rd and 4th down, as we talked about. And I'll be honest, early in the season, Travis Kelce, and it went back to my baseball days, like, man, he looks like a guy who might be done at the end of the year. And he's getting his second win. And I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Is it because of Hopkins as a rival? Coverage has changed? Or is it just getting into the season? And as an older guy, he just starts feeling better. But how is that arrival of Hopkins helping Kelce? And how do you think they will cover these two? Is Hopkins good enough at this stage to have Surtain travel with him, James, or should they try to trick it up and have Surtain on Kelce sometimes? If you can explain maybe what Hopkins has meant to them and how do you think the Broncos should cover those two?
Yeah, I think first with Travis, my understanding is this might have been kind of a rope-a-dope situation at the beginning of the season. Like I got a long way to go. Like I know that we're going to be playing postseason football. Let's just be honest. We know we're going to be doing it. We need me, come December, come January. But also I don't want to like discredit the fact at all. And I get ripped apart in Kansas City for this whenever I put like anything out social media wise. He's lost a step. And the Chiefs 100% admit it. Yet if you say it, Chiefs fans will destroy you. It takes him like 3 steps to stop, as opposed to just hitting and then going back towards the ball. But it's okay. He's 35. It's okay to lose a step. But he still has such a great ability to find space. And this uncanny chemistry that he has with Pat. Hopkins has opened it up for him for sure, because coverage has to now acknowledge both sides. Rashee Rice was the focal point of this offense. Like he really was the biggest point of this offense right now. Like it's the run game and it's the short passing game that now is split. And I'm fascinated to see when Juju Smith-Schuster comes back. This is kind of a small diatribe, like how they use Hopkins and Juju at the same time, because they both are now at this point in their career better on the interior than on the outside. Hopkins can still play on the outside some, but he's going to line up in the slot most of the time, and it's going to be not really a downfield threat. So I'm fascinated to see the way VJ kind of can mix this up, because I think Pat can handle both of those guys one-on-one. And I think you can put him on either guy.
In the slot then against Hopkins, James, and then just keep
Pat you have to
outside or on Kelce, or
there's going to be times where Hop's going to go outside, so then that's the no-brainer, because they don't have anybody else that's going to hurt you.
So send Pat with him there.
Yeah, send Pat with him on the outside. I think your decision is going to be when Kelce's either tight or they're both split. How do you want to defend it? I think my guess would be you would probably put Pat to the field side, right? I mean, that's what, just so he would have more space to play in as a coverage guy, and put McMillan on the other side. And so I do know, like against Baltimore, like J-Mac's assignment was essentially Isaiah Likely. Like that was kind of what it was. I don't know if that's going to be the same kind of deal, because you had Zay Flowers as an outside threat. That was they're a different offense. But defending both of them is really just, they pick zone apart. I think if you have the ability to play them man, I think you try it, because they're not burning you in any sense. What their advantage is their feel game, like I mentioned at the beginning of this. Like they all play with the same feel. So zone is so hard against them. I think you try to man them up. And Denver's been decent in man this year.
Yeah, they've been really good. I mean, my concern is if Cody Barton gets isolated on Kelce still, or because the thing I try to tell people about Kelce, and you know better than anyone, and I was talking to Chris Harris about this the other day for something else I was working on. It's like option routes or choice routes, but he stops in areas where no one stops. He does things because his quarterback knows what he's going to do. Like if you try to teach a tight end to do what he does, it wouldn't make any sense on a whiteboard, because he just like goes and then just stops and he curls it. And it's just him literally like in the backyard like, oh, my friend's going this way, I'm going to go that way. Well, in football, it's hard to do that because there's, 4 other guys in a route or 3. But he and Mahomes, like, they're literally playing this game by themselves. The synchronicity.
There's no tendencies. That's the
tendencies, and he knows, like, if he does this, I'm going to stop here and zone. And Travis is so great. It used to be like at the top of the route and all this, but to your point now, he's just so smart. He ends up open all the time. And Mark Andrews has some of those traits. But like I don't compare him to Gronk because Gronk was just so physical. He would just win almost because of physicality and size, and he's just bigger. Travis is a receiver playing tight end.
There you go. I was like, don't compare these two because Gronk was an unbelievably good blocking tight end.
Yeah, he could run away at the end of his career at Tampa. That's all he was a blocking tight end.
He was an extra tackle, and he was outstanding at it.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw him in New England. It was a Broncos road game there, and he jogged by, and I was like, oh, my God, he's like the size of a left tackle when I started covering the NFL. I mean, they said he was 250. I was like, no, more like 270. I mean, this was, 2012, 13, whatever it was. He was gigantic.
Yeah.
But Kelsey's a problem. He's always a problem. And they've had a little better success against him, and they've had better success in general against the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill gone in terms of keeping the games closer.
Yep.
But James, no quarterback has won there since Peyton Manning refused to go gently into that deep night on 2015, September 17th, 2015. A great game. 31-24, Jamal Charles fumble. 8 losses since then, and Steve Spagnuolo in those games has turned over the Broncos. They've had 5 touchdowns, 8 picks, 11 sacks. I mean, the Chiefs' defense is dominated under Spags, but they got Bo Nix now. And Bo's embracing it. I love this kid's confidence. I call him Iceman. That's what he went for as Halloween. Like, everyone wants to say Ferris Bueller, and it's funny. Sean Payton's much more like Ferris Bueller than Bo Nix. Yeah. Bo's a coach's son.
That's true. Yeah.
Bo's a coach's son. Like, regiment matters to him. And, like, he's got some of the swag, which I love, and he's got an edge to him, but he's not really like the funny guy. That's not Bo Nix. It really isn't. But Bo has an attitude. He's got some confidence. Like, players are talking about him, like, not because they have to. Oh, our quarterback rolling their eyes. Like, they like this guy. He was their best player on the field, I thought, against the Ravens in many ways. So how does Bo Nix handle his first time in Arrowhead? He's saying he loves it. And now he beat Auburn when he was a freshman. He beat Alabama as a freshman at Auburn. He's played in huge games, Oregon at Washington. But listen, as someone who's been to I don't know how many Broncos-Chiefs games, that is a different environment. How do you think he handles it? What are some of the keys for you for Bo Nix?
Well, the problem with this is, Troy, he's their offense. Like, he literally is their offense. And that's a lot on a rookie, right? Like, I mean, going into this week, he has 33 plays over 20 yards. Whether he's running the football or throwing it. Do you know the only player who has more than that? Lamar Jackson.
It's got to be Lamar. Yeah, it's got to be Lamar. He's the MVP.
Yeah, and he's the MVP. This is so reliant upon Bo. It's a lot for a rookie. I think, but the crazy part is I think he can handle it. I think he's handling it well. I think he's a gamer for sure. You could see that in Baltimore. Like, you knew when the way they were going for it on 4th down early, you're like, this isn't, if they don't convert these first, like, 2, this is just going to be terrible. But he kept fighting the whole time. Like, I like the way he's wired. But for him to be successful, here's the thing. Like, they haven't sacked the quarterback a bunch. I think they have like 17 sacks. I mean, the Giants have 35. Yeah, the Chiefs have like 17 sacks. And they only have 5 picks. Like, they've been a very good defense. I think they're one of the top 5-7 defenses in football. And it's because they just put you in bad situations. That's the problem. And then they make you make mistakes. Like, I think it was really, really telling. I asked Joe Lombardi yesterday, like, Chris Jones is a game wrecker, but most game wreckers, where they're going to be. Like, Chris is going to line up wherever he wants to line up. And actually, they let him line up wherever he wants. I've had this conversation with Joe Cullen, their defensive line coach, so many times. It's like, first 2 series happen. And then Chris comes back and goes, all right, this is who I want to go against. This is the matchup I want. Literally, they listen to him. And then the rest of the D-line shifts around. He's like, I want this guard. Like, this is where my massive advantage is. And he'll start getting some of that. Now, that doesn't stay consistent because they have other game plan stuff they want to accomplish. But they let him pick his spots. You're going to see him move. And Joe said it perfectly because he was like, oftentimes what will happen is he'll pick that. He'll go to that side. Then you have to – it's on the center, which makes a lot of calls here in this offense. Like, it's on the center and the quarterback to put the amount of help there, and then they bring pressure from the opposite side.
Right.
because they play off of what you've done. And that's the bind that Spags puts you in. Now, oftentimes that pressure that comes from the other side doesn't get home in terms of sacks, but the ball's out and it's incomplete.
Yeah.
Or, you make a bad decision and, Bo scrambles and he'll run out of bounds for 1 yard. Like, those are the type of things that this defense is forcing you into. And they have brilliant linebackers. Like, that's the difference. That position is so fascinating to me because every team values it very differently. Kansas City values it and puts a lot of resources there. San Francisco values it. Philly doesn't even care who plays linebacker, it seems like, half the time. Like, so, and it doesn't have, and I'm mentioning all teams that have been good over the last couple of years. So It doesn't equate like only good teams worry about linebackers. But those guys really make that entire defense go because of the way they get downhill and the way that they stuff your run game early. I think what Bo needs to do is he can't do much more. He needs somebody to do something, Troy. Like, I think that's the main aspect of all this. I've had this thought, and I want your opinion. Like, I've had this thought all of off season and through training camp. I'm like, this team's going to be competitive. I think like they're going to be in some games. Do they win a lot of them? I don't know. Needing to happen is there needs to be like 5 to 7 players that make a big jump because there's a lot of like not household names. There's young talent. Who makes the jump? The problem is they've had players jump, which is great. They're all on defense. Like Riley Moss, you're curious about Riley Moss. He's proven he's a good NFL player. Jaquan McMillan has made a jump to being one of the better nickels in all of football. Jonathan Franklin Meyer, like Jonathan Cooper, like you're seeing these jumps from certain players. They're all on defense. Like you needed 1 or 2 of them to happen on offense with as young as your skill group is. You know who Cortland is. He's a good NFL player. He's really, if you don't go to him, where else do you find success? And I think that's the hard part for Bo in this game because I go back and look at, and this ties to their opponent, Rashee Rice in the first like 9 games is nothing. He's almost like inconsequential to their offense. Go look at week 11 on for Rashee Rice. They need something like that to happen with one of their rookie receivers. That was Rashee's rookie year last year. And it just grew and grew very slowly until week 11, and it took off. Can Vele do that? Can Troy Franklin do that? I don't know. So I think a lot of this is on Bo's shoulders in this game, and that's asking a lot of your quarterback. So somebody, to answer your question, needs to make a play and needs to show up outside of Bo, honestly.
And it's why, and I got much pushback on this because covering baseball is so much different than football, James, and you love baseball, so you understand this. But you can be a buyer and seller at the trade deadline in football. There can be nuanced buying. When I was like, you can't trade, they're too young, they're rebuilding. Troy, you said they're rebuilding. I did. I picked them to win 6 games. But the AFC stinks this year. You have an opportunity. My guy was go get Njoku because you could have him for multiple years. Any guy I'm going to get, it's not a rental. It's somebody I'm going to keep for 2 to 3 years, not a rental. That's different than I'm going for Cooper Kupp in his 34. Like DeAndre Hopkins doesn't make sense for this team. That's why they moved on from Tim Patrick. But a Njoku's 28, a T. Higgins who is not available. He's 26. He's going to be your one forever, or at least 4 years in NFL terms. But to your point, that's why I say when people say I don't know about Bo, he proved to me he was the franchise quarterback in 2 different moments when he got into it with Peyton on the sideline and stood up to him. And that's what Peyton wants. Sean loves that.
Oh, yeah, he loved it. I think the only guy who loved it more than us was Sean.
He loved it. Whether it's DeMario Davis, Cam Jordan, Drew Brees, he loves guys that give it back to him. And that's why part of the million reasons he and Russell didn't get along. But that was number 1 point. And then last week, I'm like, this kid's he's Lamar Jackson light. I keep telling people he's really Jalen Hurts at this point. You could win with him. The difference is Hurts has Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Goddard, Saquon Barkley.
It's an insane group.
Javonte Williams, I love Javonte, but at some point the archetype of the story can't be, what a comeback. I can't believe he's come back from knee surgery. He ranks near the bottom of every rushing category as a starter. Okay? Who's after Cortland? For me, a perfect number 2. If you have a speed guy,
he'd be one of the best number 2s in football, honestly.
Right, and they've miscast him. They ask him to do too much, and he sometimes delivers. He has the last couple of weeks, but that's not really his role. And then who's the tight end? Adam Troutman, great guy. Nate Atkins, good dude. Like Atkins is a true blocker. He's a fullback playing tight end, and Troutman's just slow. He's slow. So against any team other than the Panthers, he doesn't get open right now. So
Mhm.
I know Sean's a brilliant offensive mind, but there's got to come a point where you got to get better talent around him. But there is a guy like that's why I've like when people are like, why do you want him to get rid of Tim Patrick? I'm like, because you've got to clear a path. They did this with the Nuggets when they finally got rid of Will Barton. Sometimes as a coach, you have to get rid of someone so you won't play him because you're just
Yeah.
so tempted to trust the veteran. Troy Franklin gets separation off the line of scrimmage. If
Mhm.
you're talking about one guy that could take a jump just from his athleticism, it's him, and then it's Audric Estime. And if you want to tell me Estime fumbled, I get it. If he fumbles again, you bench him. But you can't win with your starting running back getting 3 yards a carry. When you need 4, he gets you 3. When you need 2, he gets you 1. When you need 1, he gets you 0. Like, that's not working. To your
Yeah.
point, like, Bo's the show. Like, he's got to get help. So if they get Estime going, if you get Troy Franklin going, and Franklin and Bo are close. They're
Yeah.
close. And he's got the talent to get open. So we'll
Yeah.
see if
I
that changes.
I want to jump in on that, Troy, because honestly, like I think you're exactly right with what they could have done at the deadline. Now, honestly, I was all over the trade deadline. It's an insane time, and trying to talk to all these teams. It takes a lot to get a deal done. It really does. And there's guys that are available. They're available for a certain price. I think if you look at what Washington did, is what you're talking about, right? They went and got Marshawn Lattimore, a move that they weren't sure they were going to make. Adam Peters wants to rebuild this thing in Washington the right way with a rookie quarterback and build the goal. Well, they went and got Marshawn Lattimore, gave up a 3rd rounder, which they had 2 3rd rounders from a previous trade. And guess what? They don't want him for this year. They want him for this year, and he's under contract for the next 2, and he's only 28 years old. And we needed a corner. We needed a player at a premium position. When you're in the position the Broncos are in, your mentality at the deadline, if you're not going to be sellers, which they weren't, is can we make a move that gets us a jump start on free agency? Because we have multiple holes we need to fill. And to me, that's usually done on the premier positions, right, Troy? Like those are the positions that are tough to fill. Now, imagine if Washington was trying to get a corner and a pass rusher and a complement to Terry McLaurin all in free agency. It's just too hard to do. So they went and got a jump on it and got the corner knocked out during the trade deadline. Denver's is you don't have a tight end that's a receiving threat, which is literally a necessity in the NFL in today's game, and you don't have enough talent at receiver. What happened is you missed on a tight end and you missed on a receiver. That's what put him in this position, right? And if you go back and look at the last like 3 or 4 drafts, look at all the 1st-round receivers. There's a pretty decent hit rate. There actually really is. Like it's like 75% that they're like, these guys are legit players or superstars. There's very few misses. They missed on one. Like, and then on tight ends, like they missed on one. And so that's what put him in this spot. Imagine if they would have hit on both of those things, and then you got Bo.
Yeah.
It'd be a very different thought if your top, what was Jerry Jeudy, 12 or what was he picked? 10? If your top 10 wide receiver was in year like 4 and
perfect.
your tight, it'd be perfect. And your receiving tight end was really something. And Dulcich, which hasn't happened, Bo would be in a really good spot right now. So that's what they need to fix, because I think he did get the quarterback. Yeah, but they didn't have a whole lot of like maneuvering they could do either because of their cap situation, because they still do need picks. Washington, to circle this back, had a plethora of picks, like 10 picks.
Right. And they're reluctant. They can't miss going forward, but they're going to have to in free agency get either a tight end or a receiver, and then address the other one in the draft. So maybe you go after T. Higgins or pick a receiver, and then you get Tyler Warren in the draft, or the kid from Michigan, the tight end in the draft. But they got to get multiple playmakers for this kid to be fair to.
I will say this real quick, that there's enough people around the league I've talked to, Troy, that nobody thinks T. Higgins is a 1. Like I haven't talked to an evaluator in the league that thinks T. Higgins is a 1. And he can't stay healthy. Like that's the fear I would have by giving him the big contract. He hasn't played 16 games or 17 games in his entire career. And he's not viewed as a 1. If you're going to pay for a 1.
Pay for a 1.
But ones don't get available. Like
I was going to say,
how would you let the one out your building? So you have to take the gamble. Like perfect example is Philadelphia. It's a rotational pass rusher in Bryce Huff that you think can be that guy. So you take the gamble. It hasn't paid off. That's a perfect example of taking a 2 or a rotational guy at a premier position and saying he just hasn't had the opportunity to be the guy yet. and it didn't work for Philly. So
Yeah, you
that's the
find out
gamble
he's
you're taking in free agency. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the problem with free agency. Just because you pay him, it doesn't make him better.
Yeah.
It's like
Great
right,
point.
say
That's well said.
with pitchers, you get a third starter and make him your ace. Doesn't mean he's better. He's still a
Yeah.
number 3 or
The
4.
same guy. Yeah.
And if he's on a bad team, you're asking him to do a lot more now because now he was a 4
100%.
on a good team, and it was easy for him to kind of be incognito and live under the radar. But so James, I will leave it at this. How do you think this game goes? What is the best way for the Broncos? You can make a prediction if you want. I have them losing a close game, a bit of a rock fight, like 22-16, 21-18. But how do you see this playing out before we let you scoot out of here?
I think there's a big ankle we're going to keep an eye on, because if Pat re-aggravates this ankle like early in this game, that could change the course of the way the entire game goes. And there is a chance of that. I mean, like he re-aggravated it with nobody around him. It didn't get rolled up on. It didn't get anything. He just planted on it on a throw, and he tweaked it even further. So I think that's kind of the X factor. And I think the more pressure you get on him, which I think they can win on the edge, the tackles are not great for Kansas City. And if I love the motor that the edge guys play with in Denver, and if they can get to him and at least hit him, and there's an issue with his health, I hate to say, like, we're waiting to see if Mahomes is somewhat banged up for the Broncos to get a win in this. But I think that's the way you have to be defensively. And VJ has to go back to calling a really, really good game. I mean, their late switches in terms of their coverage, really, really late in the play clock, has been really good this season. Confusing Mahomes is difficult, but can you have a couple of those plays? And can you find a way just to, like, somehow have somebody else step up on offense? I mean, that's just really the thing. Like, and so maybe you get a bounce, and maybe you get a short field, and you get a really tough. But I do think they can win, Troy. Like, I really do. Because for some reason this team believes, like, they kind of do. They have,
they got
like,
a little
whether it's a false sense of,
they got a little Ted
where it's a
Lasso.
little, maybe it's a little false sense of confidence. I don't know what it is, but Sean has put that into the locker room. I just don't know if you have enough players, but I do think this defense will play well against that group. Like, I really do. This Chiefs offense isn't outstanding. It's just when it comes down to the end of the game, can you not have them in a position to win it? Because they win it every time. So how do you find a way to not have them in that position? It's hard.
Yeah, I would say this: don't give the ball back to Mahomes with a chance to keep you off the field. Yeah, we watched that with Fangio a couple of times. Like, just keep the ball, go for touchdowns, because field goals in Kansas City lose games, and giving the ball back to Mahomes with 3 or 4 minutes left loses the game every time.
Every time. Did you like that answer, by the way, real quick? Like, I loved Sean's answer about when he was asked about Todd Bowles going for 2 against Pat, because those are the nuances of the game that people don't really look at it as much. Like, you only have like 4 or 5, like, top of your play sheet, short yardage, goal to go type plays. Probably use 3 of them.
Yeah.
Now you're
I
like,
understood
come on,
what he went into the football weeds. So I got it. I just didn't like the idea, because you saw what Baker Mayfield, when they lost the toss, he was like, we just lost the game. Like,
100%.
My belief has always been, on the road, I'm going for the win.
I get that. I also look at
the nuances are, hey, we've emptied the chamber. We don't have any good plays left. The field stinks. It's wet. We'd rather take our chances. So I understood it. I'm just so used to being aggressive, whether I coach, when I play, like, aggressive, and it's a more of a passive approach. Even Sean admitted against Baltimore, the throwback play from Cortland to Bo, where it's like the best catch of the day. That was their
50-50 ball, baby. Yeah.
But that was their 2-point play. And he's like, I have a few more, but that was our kind of money play to go to. So I get it. It's just so much different in college, because you feel like you have 10 plays that could work.
You have an attorney, but also there was more than 30 yards to go. I mean, more than 30 seconds on the clock. I've stood on that sideline and watched Mahomes get into field goal range in 12 seconds, in 15 seconds. And they almost did it in this one, and they had to start from like the 3. So, so they almost did it like at the end of regulation in this one anyway. So, like, even if you went for 2, there's still that amount of time in regulation for him to go.
I would love that to be an issue where we're questioning Peyton on why you didn't go for 2 to win a game, because I think they do need to play well. They can lose this game and still make the playoffs for me, because the AFC stinks, and Baltimore beating Cincinnati last night helped them in terms of keeping them
That's
down.
huge for the rest of the AFC, keeping Joe Burrow as far away from the postseason as possible.
Exactly, and they have Indianapolis and Cincinnati on the schedule, but It'll be. I'm with you. I think they're going to play well. Can they win there? I got to see it. It's just so crazy. I used to cover them in the '90s, and they always won there. It
Yep.
was the other way because it was Elway making a play late or Shannon Sharp or Earl Davis, and it's just like how the world went a 180, and now Broncos country knows how Chiefs fans felt watching Elway and Manning for a better part of 20 years.
It goes back to the beginning of the conversation as we wrap this up. Like, there's just a vibe when you walk in that they're going to win, and you got to overcome that. It's an added thing you got to get over top of.
Well, we'll see. Folks, this is James Palmer. He's with Underdog Fantasy, Underdog NFL Insider, Bleacher Report. You can find him. It's at James Palmer TV still, right, on Twitter?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll own that for life, Troy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're on Threads as well. I'm sure you're there somewhere. But James does great work. He's done it for more than a decade. I love James because he approaches the NFL like I did as a baseball beat writer, and so few people do that in the NFL, especially on TV. It's just more like parachute in, parachute out. How do I look on camera? James is a beat writer. He digs in.
I still care about that. I still care about how
you still look great. You have the world's best hair. You have that.
I did cancel a haircut with my boy Kirk to get up here to the mountains.
There you go. See, somebody's living it right.
The planks were more important than the haircut. Yeah.
You're the best. James, thank you so much for joining, my friend. Hopefully it's a good one on Sunday, and I'll see you soon, at Broncos training camp, or not training camp, at the facility. But follow James Palmer. His stuff's fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure, my man.
Oh, always, buddy.